There we are.
All right, everybody, welcome. It's the pre-draft edition of the Football Diehards. Ask Me Anything Saturday. I'm going to bring Emil Cadlick along for the ride this week. Hope you're all ready and excited and enthusiastic. If you haven't drafted yet, heading into the weekend, there's plenty going on. We'll run you through some of the things that are of interest to you that you'll want to kind of be on top of, and we'll entertain your questions as we go through all this, as always. Something we like to do. First of all, and so, of course, footballdiehards.com, your one-stop shop for all things as you head into your drafts. And we'll talk about a little of that to get started until we start getting some questions. And it's one of the reasons I wanted Emil on today was to kind of run us through. The August update is still available, Emil. It'll be available through the start of next week, all the way up through, kickoff of week one, right? Because people are still drafting. We know some of the high stakers out there are still drafted beyond the Thursday night game. So we'll have that information up. What should people look for when they hit the site?
Oh wow, there's so much, and of course, Bob, congratulations on all your camp news. You've been just pounding it out, and even the last couple of days, there's been I don't know how many over 100 updates, and of course, a lot of people are in a hurry. They don't have time to answer the phone and check all their stuff. Just kidding. So you can go to the front page, you can go to the August update, you can kind of glance through all these updates and go to the teams that are interesting you, just to kind of give yourself a feel if you've been out of it for a few days. And that's kind of important. If you're in a hurry, you don't have to do that. Just, there's a configurable cheat sheet, or even on the homepage, you can just get the generic cheat sheet. That's the staff cheat sheet. When I mean generic, it's basically PPR. And get the latest cheat sheet for your draft. And of course, the configurable is a beautiful cheat sheet because you can configure it to your system for each of your drafts, each of your leagues, and that really helps in determining getting a better cheat sheet. So those are very important fundamental things. Obviously, a lot of camp news. We've got in the configurable cheat sheet. There's so many things. There's strategy articles that you can go just to strategy articles. There's evergreen articles that are really nice articles that last year and year. Of course, one of my favorites is Mike Dempsey's draft strategy article. It's incredibly helpful article for those people who draft. Excuse me, when I say draft, I meant trade article. It's a very nice article for people who can trade in their leagues, which I don't do most of in mine because I'm too lazy. But those are the basic things, and there's just so many variable things that you can go to as far as looking at mock drafts that occurred. And you can go through the magazine. If we want to do the strength of schedule article, always is really fun to review. It's very interesting to see where the strategies are to draft as far as looking at the postseason fantasy draft, where certain players, like I think Elliott has a tough schedule in the fantasy postseason. So those are good ones too. So the stomp tool, which is part of the configurable cheat sheet, is a nice thing to do. It kind of gives you the ADP of where you think you should pick the players that you've targeted, and you can target your certain players, and then when you go to the cheat sheet, it bolds those players and tells you the estimated round that you could get those in. And of course, as the later the draft goes, the more ADP turns into poop, and you just got to go get them when you feel good about it. So, and a million things I haven't mentioned. So if you're really in a
tons
hurry,
of tools.
Go ahead.
Yeah, tons of tools, and going back to configurable cheat sheet and input your parameters, roster requirements, scoring systems, etc. And it'll match up our projections with those things, and that will take that into week one when you'll find the flash update goes into effect. We'll have a number of the usual articles you'll find there. Great staff contributors. We're bringing Casey Joyner on board this year as well as part of that, along with Jamie Calandro. A lot of DFS content from him. Reginald James will be helping out the commissioners. That goes along with our usual people, Justin Lanero, John Lobb, Evan Tarciano. Jen Ryan will be chipping in on occasion. So plenty of content up and available for all of you throughout, and see some questions coming in too. A couple things we wanted to touch on before we get to the questions. Emil, I think for me, the J.K. Dobbins out for the season. I have moved Gus Edwards up into pretty much a plug-and-play spot. I put him in that tier right above DeAndre Swift, kind of in the Chris Carson tier, I would call it, which for me is right after, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Chris Carson, and now for me, Gus Edwards, like about running back 17 or so. I don't think that's an unreasonable play because what was the one concern you had about J.K. Dobbins, if you had a concern, right? Wasn't necessarily that he wouldn't be very explosive and have a great role. It was that Gus Edwards is lurking around. Well, Gus Edwards isn't lurking on Gus Edwards, although maybe Tyson Williams is, but not to the degree we had concerns about Gus Edwards, who's been every bit as productive, with his opportunities. Maybe slightly less explosive, but only slightly less. Evo mentioned the Camp News. Go in and check out. I did a piece. Jamison Hensley laid out the numbers for what J.K. Dobbins has done and compared what Gus Williams has done in similar opportunities, such as in scoring positions inside the red zone, etc. And it's all pretty good. The thing that you maybe lose a little bit with Edwards is the receiving equity that you had with Dobbins. Gives it a little more in the receiving game. But this is a run-heavy team as it is. So yeah. Look, I'm drafting Edwards. I'm willing to reach up for him.
You nailed it there. You absolutely nailed it. The Dobbins problem was, first off, he's the second running back because Lamar Jackson's the number one running back, but he's got that Gus Edwards that comes in and takes away a lot of opportunities. So, gosh, maybe Gus Edwards may do just as well as Dobbins, if not better. I don't think he's got the skills to catch the ball as well, but I don't think he needs it. And it's has the excitement been over Gus Edwards overstepped his ADP? In other words, is his ADP a little high right now? I haven't really seen him go that quickly in the drafts I've been in. So he's an interesting value pick right now.
Yeah, it's going to be. I agree with that. And for me, as I said, I'm ranking him a little higher. You don't have to draft him quite that high. You're seeing him go a little later still. And I would be eager to leverage that value myself. Ravens, you'll be surprised to learn, a very run-heavy team. So there's some issues there. Tyson Williams kind of moves into the handcuff role, and so don't think you'd want to overdraft him or get overly enthusiastic. By the way, thanks everyone for stopping by. Appreciate your time. If you could hit the subscribe button and the like button and hit your notifications. We're going to do this. I'll be here every Saturday throughout the season and probably another night during the week to kind of go through some of the situations and things to get on your heading into it. We'll have our usual DFS videos throughout the course of the year with Jason Brady and Jamie Calandro. So John Law will be around as well doing some stuff. So you don't want to miss out on that. So hit the subscribe button and make sure you get in. Watch your notifications, emails, etc. We'll put those out in advance. So one other situation I wanted to get to before we get to the questions is the Saquon Barkley situation. And the Giants in general. We got Barkley, Kenny Golladay, Evan Ingram, all various stages of rehabs from injuries. Golladay missed the entirety of training camp essentially with a hamstring issue. Sounds like he got back on the practice field this week, so he is working. The injury is over. Evan Ingram injured his calf in the last exhibition game. It's a bit of concern. Calves are tricky. And we all know Saquon Barkley coming off the knee injury doesn't quite know where he'll be at. He took some contact in practice this week, so he's on track. There are people out there who fully expect him to be on the field week one. But can you expect him to be the full Barkley? I don't know. And last time we saw the full Barkley, it wasn't entirely impressive, right? So, look, I think he's a great back. He's an explosive, dynamic player, great in the receiving game. So, absolutely want him. I think this is the case, Evo, where you start looking at his ADP has dropped a little bit in recent days. I've taken him in like the second round and felt really good about it. Early in the second round, like in a 12-team league. I've taken him 12th or 13th. Pairing him up with another back who I know is going to open the season, or I expect to open the season stronger. Is that kind of where you're at on him, or are you dialing back even further?
It's tough. I've taken him in the bottom of the first lately. I think you just have to look at the league in your mind and say, hey, if he's not that productive for 1, 2, or 3 weeks, is this a league I can get by with it? Is it maybe a short roster or a short starting lineup, or the people in it? Maybe 6 teams make the playoffs in that league. So if I can get this guy and get through the first 3 weeks and still make it in the final 6 and make the playoffs. So if you've got some really great players in a league that you're really going to struggle, then you have to think maybe I don't want to take that risk. But if he can get to be healthy quickly, we know, especially he catches the ball too, he can be an incredible back. And if you can get him in an early second round, that's very tempting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I don't think any of us are rushing. Kenny Golladay has been really super low priced, and I think that's fine. I'm not afraid to try to leverage that value either. Much like Cortland Sutton, I think those are guys who could be underpriced assets heading into the season. But since you're not paying full price and you hope for the upside, I think they're in a good spot. So some questions we'll get rolling on here. Email Dennis Bennett, our good friend, his colleague, wants to know if we're picking our draft spot. Where do we prefer to be at a third-round reversal versus non-third-round reversal? So I've done a couple of these third-round reversals recently. Just did one last week with a 15-second clock. So I don't know that I really was able to comprehend what my advantage or disadvantage was in that particular draft. But in general, like I still like drafting on either end. I feel like I have some really good opportunities. Obviously, drafting first overall. I want to take Christian McCaffrey. I want to, kind of leverage that. I feel like it gives me a lot of flexibility in a regular draft, non-third round reversal to roll through and like, coming around at the turn, I often get Darren Waller, and then I can either get a receiver of choice, another running back of choice. If I get the receiver, I feel pretty good about it because why Christian McCaffrey, as Mike Dempsey will say on the Football Diehards radio program all the time, is a running back and a half. You feel like you have a little advantage there as long as he's in the locked and upright position. The 3 games last year he was healthy, averaging nearly 30 points a game. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for that spot and for the tail end. I've had really strong drafts drafting, whether it's 11 or 12 in a 12-team league. I feel pretty good about what I'm getting. Either way, that second half of the first round or kind of the midway point, I'm not – in recent drafts, I've started taking Javonte Adams as early as 5, 6, coming back around, still like the range of running backs available to me, taking Travis Kelce in the 7, 8, 9 range. Still happy, as Mike Dempsey also says, the peanut butter and jelly of his drafts is Travis Kelce at about 8 or 9, and then coming back around to get Najee Harris in the second round. That's a combo he has a lot, and I do as well. I think that's a great combo as well. Antonio Gibson probably available in that range as well. So the third round reversal, it adds a layer of intrigue. I don't know that it changes materially where I'm at. Maybe it makes me a little more interested in the middle of the draft, so I kind of have an even spot throughout, and maybe that's ideal for that. Emo, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've in the past, I like around 9 or 10. I like to take advantage of the third round reversal. If I can plan out that early, obviously if you have the 9th pick, you then get the 4th pick in the second round, but then of course your third round's late. And if you can sit there and plan that out and you like what you see there at the 4th pick in the second round, I've been very successful at that. I kind of like to wait to see who falls to me at 9 or 10, because somebody typically falls to you. And then, bam, the 4th pick in the second round, I get to take another player, and I may be able to get a combination there. Now, I've been doing a lot of top 3 tight end picks, and sometimes I like to take Kelce in the, that time somewhere in that area, like you were saying. But a third round reversal, if I get to the bottom of the third, like the 9th or 10th pick in the third, Kittle may still be there. I don't think the other 2 will be there at that point. So you could try and plan on taking Kittle in the bottom of the third with my strategy I was just saying, and that may be a nice combination. So I like the later picks in the first round with third round reversal.
Yeah, I feel like regardless, when I start out with those late picks, I feel like I'm going through the draft when I have that tail end turn. I'm feeling like I'm being more aggressive and I'm grabbing players that I know won't make it around back to me. And I think that's worked out for me, okay? Whereas when I have that early first round pick or second round pick, I feel like I'm a little more in front of the draft. That changes in a 14-team draft for me, which I just did the other night. Had the first pick overall, and I did not like the way the draft played out. It totally played out. It was a totally different dynamic than a 12-team in terms of what was waiting for me when I came back around in the second and third, the round 2, 3 turn. And this was not a third round reversal, so I haven't done any 14-team third round reversals. I've done 10 and 12. And look, I like it. I like the third round reversal. I think it's a pretty fair thing to do. So, and it hasn't altered my strategy much, but I think if I was in that situation, I'd prefer the middle. Thank you for the question, Dennis, and showing up and giving us a watch here. Matthew Millville, drafting 4. He keeps players up to 3 years. Last year with Barkley, last year with Barkley. So next year he needs to protect a new player. Should get Adams, Elliott, Taylor, Gibson will be there too, or stick with Adams. I would stick with Adams to the degree possible for me. I think there's a pretty strong argument to be made that he's in position. Well, look, he scored 18 touchdowns last year. He's a prolific touchdown scorer over the course of his career. He's a dynamic red zone weapon. He is the goal line back of choice. Dempsey has said that as well, and I don't disagree with it. 14 touchdowns. I think of his 18 touchdowns last year, 14 of them came in the red zone. He is essentially the goal line weapon of choice for Aaron Rodgers. And you watch some of those plays, those little comebacks and hitches that he runs right inside the 10-yard line. He's nearly unstoppable the way they use him. So I'm fine taking Adams as early as pick 5. I have done that. Pick 4 doesn't seem like a reach if you have him there. So you already have Barkley. I'm guessing you're keeping him. And the question about Adams is, do you want to keep him beyond this year, not knowing the quarterback situation and his situation with his contract? Those are the concerns for me. Taylor and Gibson seem like a pair of young backs that I could roll with going forward for a long time. I prefer Taylor over Gibson.
So he's got the 4th pick, and he can keep Peoples for 3 years. And he's already got Adam. He's already got Barkley. It's very tempting to take Adams and hope that they can solve their issues there in Green Bay after this first year. So I tend to agree with you, but it would be kind of interesting if you're worried about that to take one of those two, Taylor or Gibson. And boy, you got your running back situation set up, but then you've got to kind of figure out how you're going to get some good receivers. And there are a lot of receivers that you can get later, but you really want to be able to get an optimal one. So that's a tough situation.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think you could throw out a scenario where Aaron Rodgers, not that he's vindictive or mean-spirited, but do you think he'd like to get back at the Packers in every way possible? One of those ways would be making sure Javonte Adams has the season of a lifetime going into a contract negotiation. So, but yeah, so I guess the concern for Adams is keeping him beyond this year is the uncertainty around Rodgers. So if that's a concern for you, I could easily see Taylor or Gibson would be my next choices. Sam Bam, 68, 12-team standard scoring, 3rd pick in a snake draft. Thinking he will end up with Henry 1st, Waller 2nd. Am I crazy to think about Gus Edwards with a 3rd-round pick? You are not, sir. That's my stance, and I'm sticking with it. I think that's a totally fair approach. So I think you'll see Edwards go in the 4th round as well. But if you really want to lock in on getting him, I think playing it safe there in the 3rd is not crazy at all.
So that would be the early 3rd. Yeah, that's a little higher, but hey, this guy, he's in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, that's my thought. Like if you're not feeling that confident in him, it's possible he would come back around to the 4th. I think it's a little bit risky there, though, especially if you're playing with some pretty knowledgeable fantasy managers who have a pretty good understanding of what he might be capable of. Look, he's averaged 5 yards a carry throughout the course of his career. Playing a secondary role, granted, but his red zone numbers have been great. So, I'm all in on this, maybe more so than others. But I love the Henry Waller start. I have it in a lot of drafts because it falls to me that way. And after that, I'm pretty comfortable going any direction, whether it's a running back or a receiver. I think the thing is, if it's a standard scoring league, this seems to be like a really ideal setup for you with Henry and Edwards.
Wow, that's a good point. And he won't be there in the bottom of the 4th. I doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it.
He meaning Gus Edwards.
Not sure how much clarity we're going to give you on this. We're still focused in draft mode a little bit, so that would be something to take into account as we're doing this. But Kyle Pitts or Jonnu Smith, look, you're spending the fortune on Kyle Pitts. I don't know why you wouldn't play him. I like Jonnu Smith fine. I think maybe he's a little bit of an undervalued commodity. But if you're paying what you're paying to get Pitts, and right now it's 3rd, 4th, 5th round, he's the 3rd, 4th, 5th tight end at the latest coming off your board, I can't see why you wouldn't play him to open up the season. Are you same place on that, Evil?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're going to throw the ball to him week 1. They're just going to. That's just the way it is. And I think he's ready. He doesn't need to do much to help you out. You got to play him. You got to play him week 1.
Yeah, I can't imagine not lining him up. So there you have it. I hope that helps out. Jonnu Smith, number one, he's been a little beat up. Look, I think this Patriots offense is going to be, focused a lot using heavy use of the tight ends. It should be expected. But with the rookie quarterback starting his first game against the Miami defense, that might be relatively tough. I don't know. I don't know that I need to force anyone into the fray there. Let's see. Not sure what's going on with that over the next few years for projecting him over Elliott or Taylor. So that is the question, Matthew. I hope we kind of laid that out. That is the concern, right? You don't know with the quarterback going forward. And I mean, I think Taylor is a much safer play. Elliott slightly less safe than Taylor, and maybe both of them not having the upside at their position, the same upside. I mean, Javonte Adams is locked in as a 1 or 2. I think Elliott and Taylor are capable of that. I think Taylor may end up that this year, but we know how running backs tend to vary a little bit. So, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're more comfortable with the running back. By all means, go with that. Given the situation for Adams going forward, the lack of certainty at quarterback is the concern. So I get it. John Wagner, 8th team, 7th round. Adams or Kelsey running back. Oh, teammate 7th. I guess you're saying 7th pick. I don't know if Adams will last to you there. It's an 8 team though, so I really wouldn't worry about it. I mean, you're going to have a great team. If Kelsey's there, I'd go ahead and go Kelsey and Adams. If they're both available in an 8 team, and you're still going to get a reasonably solid running back at the next turn. They won't be as high end, but you're going to have tons of leverage at those 2 positions. So I would not talk you out of that, John. Paul Mastrangelo, his draft is tonight and doesn't know his position yet. Do you have a sleeper at RB and wide receiver? We have tons of sleepers at running back and wide receiver. I think wide receiver, Emil, for me, is a position so much depth, and you'll find so many wide receivers available, wide receiver ones or anticipated wide receiver ones on their team that are going way late. Corey Davis is a guy that I have my eye on who seemed to make a really good connection with Zach Wilson over the course of the summer. And came on strong. Was pretty productive last year. So in the wide receiver 1 role, I think it's great. I think making a speculative play on a player like Henry Ruggs III. We're hearing great things about Brian Edwards too. Very late in drafts. Tyrell Williams, I anticipate to be the Lions wide receiver 1. I don't think that's that's like being the tallest skyscraper in Tulsa, I guess. But it is something. So I think those are late round guys. We call them free square guys. We have a whole video on that if you want to go back to the website and check that out. Where we dig into it. But I think, in running.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
In running back, I mean, I kind of have an eye on players who might rise up to the top of the depth chart quickly. Phillip Lindsay being one, James Conner being one. I think there are others as well. But we kind of dig into that in depth. Go ahead, Emil.
Yeah, staying at running backs, again, Damien Harris with the Patriots. What is a sleeper? But I can consistently still get this guy as my 3rd running back. And this is a league where you start 2 running backs and you have a flex, and you don't have to pay a lot for them. And people just have that fear about New England. I really think this guy is going to continue to do well this year. And you mentioned all the receivers that are on my list. Russell Gage is another guy that people just kind of forget about. He's the number 2 wide receiver for Atlanta. You got Pitts. You got Ridley, who I do like to take a lot in drafts if you can get him. He's starting to go too high, but he could have a high potential. And Russell's a guy you just kind of forget about. He finished 37th last year at wide receiver when Julio was there, and Julio did have a few weeks he was injured. So you can get Russell late, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for value. You don't have to spend a lot. Somebody in Las Vegas, but back to Las Vegas Raiders, somebody there is going to be catching the ball other than Waller, and it's Ruggs or maybe it's Edwards. Both those guys you can get late. Edwards you can get really late. I've kind of been throwing my money at Ruggs since he was the number 1 pick a year ago, and he had a bad year. I like to look at a lot of players in their 2nd year. People forget about him. That guy had a bad year. Yeah, he had a bad year. Why? What happened? Is he prepared now? And sometimes you can get those guys at great values, and if they don't pan out, you didn't spend a lot, and you took more secure picks early in your early rounds.
Right, you just move on from them. That's why we call them free square players. And I agree with all those. It was pretty much everything you said there, Emil. Josh, what do you think of Callaway as a very late round? I see him rising up the ADP a little bit. I think last drafts he's closed in. Maybe moved inside the double digit. Maybe that was in a 14 team, so maybe that's why he moved inside the double digits. But yeah, I think it's a strong play. Looks like he's capable of being the wide receiver 1 for the Saints until Michael Thomas gets back. And look, we don't know how long it'll take Michael Thomas to get up to speed. So He's shown a lot in preseason. Callaway has some chemistry with Jameis Winston, shown the ability to separate, shown the ability to be a playmaker, take the ball away, win contested catches. I mean, there's a lot to like about him, and some of this goes back to last year. He had at least one really solid game. I know Traquan Smith says he has 3 solid games, and look what he has to show for it. But Callaway looks a little more like the real deal. Big body, or big enough, 6 foot, 200-pounder. I like him an awful lot. I think if you can get him in the double-digit rounds, you're going to come out way ahead on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. This guy, if he's going a much sooner, but it's still one of those kind of free square scenarios. And like you said, if Thomas doesn't really come back that well, and this guy has established himself with the quarterback, the worry is when you get into the fantasy playoffs, is this guy just going to be an average player? He's a great sleeper type as long as he stays with an ADP that, especially double digits. When you said late, I don't know how late it is these days, but it's still late enough for him to be a very valuable pick. And okay, yeah, there may be a downplay when Thomas comes back, but I think that's an opportunity that you got to take, especially because you're getting him so late.
I talked about this on the Football Diehards on SiriusXM NFL Radio. That'll be something you can catch every Saturday, everybody, by the way. We'll be on Saturday on the Fantasy Channel from 5 to 7, and then on NFL Radio from 8 to 11. So if you can't get enough Diehards, that'll be the night to get almost enough Diehards. Me and Dempsey on 2 different channels all night long. So, yes, I agree on all that, and I think Valerie McClellan, unfortunately, in an 8-team league, couldn't get much interest to draft at least 10. Can you still dominate this league? Yes. You can not only dominate it, you have a better chance to dominate it, especially if you're a fairly knowledgeable manager, and the fact that you're here suggests you are, especially if you're in a league with, some people who don't pay as close attention. You can really dominate and leverage. Go to the website, get a configurable cheat sheet, put in the team, put in the amount of teams. You can set that size, put in your roster configuration and your point scoring, and we'll deliver you a cheat sheet that'll help you get there. And I'm guessing that you're already well ahead of the game there. So yes, Valerie, you can still dominate. Mark Spafford, do we think Austin Eckler will get goal line work? That hasn't been the norm. I've got some interest in his usage this season. Based with Joe Lombardi coming in as the offensive coordinator. Last time we saw him as a coordinator, it didn't go great in Detroit, but he went to New Orleans, spent some time working under Sean Payton as the quarterback's coach. He comes in as the coordinator there with some familiarity on the usage of one Alvin Kamara, who has at least 80 catches in every season as a pro and 100 targets in all but one season. I think we'll see Eckler heavily used. I don't know if that extends to the goal line. That said, Alvin Kamara has been a great touchdown scorer. And some of that comes from outside the red zone because of his playmaking ability. Maybe we'll see that with Eckler. I think the big key for Eckler is not so much the goal line work, expecting them to put in a bigger body between the tackles for obvious runs like that seems like the most likely outcome. I don't think it's a guaranteed outcome. So you have that upside. But we've seen him when he's healthy, what he's capable of in terms of being a PPR scorer. And I don't think I'd be worried about the goal line work in that regard. I think he's productive enough on the rest of the field to not worry about that. People?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's an excellent point. So I've got nothing to add on that one.
All right, Henry Ivory, thoughts on Damien Williams with Tariq Cohen being out? I've talked recently with people who cover this team on a daily basis. They say to watch Williams, that there's going to be a bit of a role for him, especially with Cohen out. But also, he can spell, he's not just a receiving threat. He can spell, the primary back, David Montgomery, if need be. So I do think he'll have a role, and he'll certainly get that receiving work. We saw, Montgomery wasn't bad as a receiver last year. He's heavily targeted, so it's not like he's horrible. And I think, he's going to be the primary guy, but Williams knows the offense, and so I do think there's some opportunities going to be there with Cohen out. And Cohen, in case you missed it, is on the PUP list to open the season, so he'll miss at least the first 6 games.
And remember, Damien Williams, his ADP, I don't have it in front of me. It depends on your league. You can look it up on our site, footballdivers.com. You can get that guy so late, unless you got some paranoid guy who drafts Montgomery and wants his handcuff. So you don't have to spend much to get Damien Williams. He's another good late pick when you're sitting there in this 16th, 17th, 18th going, everybody's gone, who do I take? Well, Damien Williams is a great opportunity there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So John Wagner, 13 rounds, 8-team. Yeah, it's, 8-team, I get it, though. Sometimes if you're playing those, it changes the dynamic a fair amount an 8-team league, so be ready to jump ahead and draft players and then feel a little more flexible. If you don't get that top running back, if you want to go wide receiver heavy and you think the value is there, go where the value is. There's going to be players available to you throughout this draft. Henry Ivory was thoughts on what to do with David Johnson this year. Like, there's a range of outcomes for Johnson that goes from him being the lead back to him being the forgotten man, right? We've already heard, essentially, from David Johnson confirmed it, that he's going back into the Duke Johnson role. He's going to be the receiving back, and they're going to lean heavily on Mark Ingram and Philip Lindsay as the early down backs. I like Lindsay as a guy who maybe down as the season progresses becomes maybe the top fantasy play there. But I think to start out with a 3-man committee, rolling out David Johnson as the lead portion of that is not like the worst idea possible. We don't know how bad this team is going to be in general. So I mean, if you need to play a Houston back, I would not dissuade you from playing Johnson, at least to start the season, right? If he got close to double-digit points the first week, I think you'd be really happy with that. But I'm hoping you have better options in general all the way down through your flex position, Emil.
Yeah, I'm a little mad at the guy. I get a little emotional. That's one of my biggest Achilles heels. And it's such a difficult situation there. You know, but Johnson, if he really, like you said, if you can get him late, if you may want to play him early, if this guy starts doing this thing where he's getting targeted enough just because he's a dump-off guy because they don't have a lot of depth at receiver per se, he could be an effective, flex player. So I'm trying not to draft him. I just won't draft him. I won't draft the guy. I'll wait. It's a 20 round. I still won't draft him, which isn't really that smart, is what I'm trying to say. So
I'll let somebody else be the hero, and I'll let somebody else be the hero and draft him, and I'll wait on Philip Lindsay, although Lindsay's going earlier these days.
I'll take Lindsay. I love Lindsay as my 4th back, but in week 1, you want to get guys that may actually surprise you, that may have some upside or have some previous potential that look good in situations. And he may be a guy after week 1 you go, wow, I'm so glad I got that guy on my roster because he's getting 6 targets and he's getting 40 yards in receiving and 3 catches, and that's almost getting to 10 points. Or you go, cut him, and it hasn't cost you much.
Yeah, drafting later, I think all these guys are totally acceptable. When I'm drafting a little earlier and I'm looking for guys who I could start, I'm looking for clear paths to workload that aren't divided up, and that means the Houston backfield is not what I'm hoping to have to rely on early in the season anyway. Maybe give it a little time to shake out, and that'll come out better. You're kind of rolling the dice on any of them. Flex question, Daryl Henderson or Gus Edwards? Brian Larkin wants to know in a standard league. You might have missed me earlier. I'm all in Edwards. I would go Edwards there. Look, I think Daryl Henderson is going to be a fine play. I don't know that they expect him in Los Angeles. The Rams themselves, believe in him as a true feature back, right? I mean, they bring in Sony Michel. And, if you talk to people who cover the team on a daily basis, they'll tell you that, Henderson seems like the lead man early on, but the team does have concerns about his durability. And I try to be injury agnostic. And I think his price now is fair in 12-team leagues. Still see him going in the 4th, anywhere in the 4th to 5th round. I think that's a fair price for him as a running back 3 in a lot of cases. I think that's fine. I would much rather have Gus Edwards. It's not even close, especially in a standard league.
Totally agree. Ditto.
All right, John Wagner. 8-team, round 3, Montgomery, Robinson, or Carson. I love Chris Carson. I would probably go with him. I would definitely take him over Montgomery. One issue for me, and I think Dwayne Brown's going to play for this Seahawks. Talked to Curtis Crabtree, who covers the team locally there last night, and he agreed with that. He doesn't think Dwayne Brown is going to sit out for a season and pass up on $10 million. I don't either, so that's fine. But I don't know if the Bears' offensive line can be fixed, right? I mean, their starting tackles. The rookie has had some back issues. I think they think they've got them fixed, but beyond that, offensive line has looked horrible so far. And I'm not, look, Montgomery was great down the stretch last year, and the workload was fantastic. So I like all those things. I'm just a little higher on Carson just in this offense in general. That said, I would also sign off on Allen Robinson because I'm a huge Robinson guy as well. I have him ranked inside my top 10 wide receivers. So obviously I might have a little bit of a narrative going in my head on him.
Is he talking about James Robinson or Allen?
Oh, I guess maybe James Robinson. I'm focused on Allen. So of these backs, I would probably rank them Carson, Robinson, and Montgomery if that's the case. again, in an 8-team, you're going to have a lot of options, and all those guys should be available for you in round 3. So I would probably, I think for me, Carson stands out ahead of both of those as well. But we know Robinson last year ended up with running back 1 totals, and I think that's within his range of outcomes again this year now that Travis Etienne's gone.
Yeah, and the other thing that just a little, frosting on the cake or something to think about is if Fields gets in and starts playing, he could be running the ball inside the 10-yard line a little bit, taking just a little bit away from Montgomery to push him down a little bit in his fantasy value.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. That's one of the things that I like about Damien Harris right now. We haven't talked about it, but Mac Jones named the starter, Cam Newton gone. Who is the winner in that situation? And as Mike Dempsey has said on our radio program, and I agree with, it's Damien Harris, because the best goal line back on the team is now gone. Cam Newton, the usurper of touchdowns in those situations, is not there. And so Damien Harris, who we expect to have a good workload anyway, now maybe gets those goal line carries that Cam was vulturing. So that's good news there. Hex, hello. Hi, Hex. Thoughts on Javonte Williams? I like him an awful lot. I like him more than Melvin Gordon. I think, it's going to be a timeshare, it seems like, to start the season. That makes perfect sense. But from everything I've heard from people covering the team on a daily basis, the desired outcome is not in question. They want Javonte Williams, who they traded up for, to be the lead back sooner rather than later. It's a matter of, can he demonstrate his ability to understand pass protections, things like that. That's always the key for rookie running backs. Quarterbacks are expensive. Protecting them is important. Rookie running backs need to show they can do that. Hell, veteran running backs need to show they can do that, right? So that's something you need to watch about.
Yeah, you also, where can you get them? People get so excited. Maybe you got a Denver Bronco fan and you get paranoid and you can take them a little earlier. Because, when I'm sitting there and I've already taken 2 running backs, depends on your drafts and everything. Like, I'm looking at either Williams or Damien Harris, and I'm taking Damien Harris first. And then if Williams is there later, then I'm going to take him because I feel more reliable of Harris.
Yeah, I think the workload seems a little more reliable as well. But also Williams maybe has more upside, as the younger player. So, yeah. I mean, those are the trade-offs. And it goes back to something I talk about a lot is, your roster construction, building risk. You don't want to build a risky roster, but you want to take some risks within position groups, right? So if you feel like you have a couple steady running backs ahead of him, then maybe you take a chance on Williams as opposed to going with another guy you expect to be steadier, like Damien Harris, right? That's kind of, and you do the same thing at receiver and tight end and at quarterback even. You maybe take a higher risk player and then mitigate that with some safer plays. At running back, we tend to do that with workloads by drafting guys we think have secure, clear paths to workload, right? That's why you draft them so early, because you think they're going to have the ball in their hand constantly. When you get a couple of those and you're looking at the next choices, do you want another one of those? Or do you want one that can maybe be that catch that lightning in a bottle guy like Williams? That would be one of the possible outcomes there. So that's kind of something to watch for. Mark Spafford, do you feel head coaches will split up rushing attempts a little more this season because of the 17-game schedule? Yes. I think we'll see a little more of that. And I don't know how much it's going to affect the top players, but maybe there'll be entire games where we don't see them as much, maybe late in the season, when things are sealed up and they can give their players some rest. So I think it's something to watch for, but it's not affecting how I draft in general. I'm still drafting the players I want. The top players I think are still going to be the top players. It's just something we'll have to deal with. And maybe you just want to be a little deeper at the position. Maybe that's why a guy like Damien Harris, who you want as your third back at some point, you maybe want a little more steadiness. Emil?
Yeah, I think you've really, really formed it well there. I totally agree.
John Wagner is Jones. I'm assuming that's Julio, a wide receiver 2 in an 18, probably 6th round. I'm thinking you should probably be able to do better for a wide receiver 2, but maybe not. But if so, I mean, there's a lot of open targets in Tennessee. I think 200 of them. And Julio Jones is one of the best receivers in the league over the course of his time, but he's getting older, right? And so there are concerns. The Tennessee Titans were one of the 5, were the bottom 5 in pass attempts last year. They are crazy efficient with those pass attempts, in large part because A.J. Brown is super good. And maybe Julio Jones is, can add to that a little bit. Ryan Tannehill's been playing lights out. So, I don't know. I don't want to. I'm not telling anyone not to draft Julio Jones. I don't have a lot of shares of him for that reason, though.
Yeah, top
Um,
16 seems a little high to me. I think I may push down and get. I've got him. Whatever. There's just some other guys like Ayuk that you could maybe reach to get or get around later. Take somebody else with that pick at a different position. If an 8-team league is a very it's trying hard to figure out where to take those quarterbacks. But since you only have 8 teams, sometimes you could take a quarterback a little earlier than normal and get one of those top 1, 2, or 3 quarterbacks and really give you that little edge and still get somebody other than Julio with that pick around later that may do better than Julio.
Yeah, I think Julio may fall a little bit in this case in an 8-team. So I'd play it by ear, but if you're hard to set on him, I mean, I think having him as a wide receiver too, obviously you could come out way worse than that. Neither of those, it's worth noting, neither of those players, Brown or Julio, have practiced much this summer. I don't need to know they need a lot of practice, right? And also Ryan Tannehill has not practiced much this offseason, so maybe a little slow start could be a concern, but hasn't kept me from drafting them at the right price, that's for sure. Peckish ATX, thoughts on Jonathan Taylor returning late first round value? I expect that to be the case. Do we get what we saw the last 5 games last year where he was like just running rampant? I'm not sure. There are people with the organization who totally believe that that's the thing they saw, and maybe we'll see some of the offense redesigned around that or focusing on getting them the ball in the hands like that. So that is something, I'm very comfortable drafting him at the late first round price.
Totally agree. He's fallen to the first round in a lot of drafts, and he's his second year. He's gotten some more time. Running backs learn early, but still, again, I was talking about these second-year players that may have done as well, but he did well, and he's still fallen into the bottom of the first round. So I think that's a great value for him. They definitely want to, run the ball and give their new quarterback, a little comfort.
Yep. Matthew Melville, what's your thoughts on OBJ? Look, is there a player with a wider range of possible outcomes, all the way up to wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 3 prices? I mean, I think that's what you're getting. I think it's worth doing it. So that's something I'll go back to what I talked about, building risk within your roster groups, right? So let's say you have a couple guys are huge catch total players and guys that are going to get you that PPR value each and every week. And let's say Robert Woods, or, you have a couple players like that are going to put up those, those solid catch totals and have some upside, but you want a super upside play, maybe as your third receiver. I think OBJ there, I talked to Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report last night and asked him how Beckham was looking in practice. He said he looks good, looks fully healed, and that he thinks, though, that Beckham is kind of, happy with where he's at right now. He wants to be on a playoff team. But Browns obviously made playoffs last year, and he's not going to be, a squeaky wheel if he's not getting tons of targets. If he makes 2 or 3 big plays a game, he's going to be satisfied with that, no understanding how the offense works. And like as a fantasy manager, if I got those 2 or 3 big plays out of him a game, maybe that should be the part of the expectation built in, and maybe there's some great games. Maybe he's never that guy we saw when he was in New York, but that talent is still there. Whether the Browns use it or not is the question. So I think there's going to be times when you see him be that guy, and there's going to be times when he's a little more, pedestrian in his total output.
Yeah, I have trouble drafting him, but I have because of exactly what Bob said there. Right now he's ranked as like a wide receiver 3. Maybe Baker Mayfield now has matured. He seems to be getting to be a better quarterback and seeing things better and making better decisions. And perhaps Odell Beckham is healthier now and has a positive attitude. You can get him, as a wide receiver 3, and maybe he becomes a wide receiver 2 and gives a lot of value to your team. And the basement or the is not really that low for him, unless he goes.
Yep,
south.
I would agree with all of that. Right, and
Cool.
that's probably within the range of possible outcomes too. Although it sounds like he's in a pretty good place in that regard. John Wagner looking at Murray. I'm assuming Kyler Murray at 5th or 6th round in an 8-team. Sure. I mean, I think that's probably a little early again in an 8-team, but I don't draft in a lot of 8 teams, so maybe that's where you need to go. I think you could probably wait a little later. I'm just kind of doing the math in my head. The 4th, 5th round is where I'm seeing him going in regular 12-team leagues. So I'm assuming maybe he'll go a little later. But if your league goes quarterbacks early, maybe that makes sense that he goes in the same range he would in a 12 team. Dominic Conti, 2 quarterback league. Who would you draft number 1? I'm still drafting Christian McCaffrey over 1 and 2 quarterback leagues and taking my chances coming around to the next turn. So you'll see different levels of quarterback greed in these 2 quarterback leagues. I mean, if it's a true 2 quarterback league and not a super flex league, that adds to that, FOMO, that fear of missing out that kind of drives the price up high. But I'm still seeing usually 2 to 3 running backs, or at least the first 2 come off as normal. Don't often see Patrick Mahomes coming off in one of those first 2 picks. I haven't in the 2 quarterback leagues I've been drafting in.
Yeah, it's really depend. I've seen various things from other league to league, very, very, very big variations. So when you say number 1, you mean I didn't even need a first pick, but obviously I think Bob's right about that. And as you get around into the second rounds, if things are just heavily, there's 8 quarterbacks taken, then you better start taking a quarterback or 2. And, you can kind of see how it goes and feel your league out as when you want to start pounding. But you're going to probably end up wanting 3 quarterbacks with a 2-quarterback start. And you can start looking in the late quarterbacks like Teo or whatnot. There's some guys down there. Carr. We all forget about Carr. He's a very quality starter in a 2-quarterback league. But you really want to get 3 quarterbacks you feel are going to give you, 17 weeks of play.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So I think that's the approach right there. Hex, I need to drop either Hollywood Brown, Mecole Hardman, or Deshaun Watson in the 13th round in a 5 half-point PPR keeper league. So I don't think either of those guys would make me bail on Deshaun Watson, who I have zero expectation. Okay, I've called it 90-10 that he does not play at all this season all along. I'll stick with that. And I think the 90 is probably closer to 100, but it's current NFL, crazy things happen, so I leave that wiggle room. But having Deshaun Watson beyond this year seems like a pretty good idea. I don't think either of those guys warrant me moving on from Watson. I would probably pass on Hardman. I hear he might be in line to improve this season, but he's lower down in the pecking order in an offense that funnels through a very narrow band of players, right? It's Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Travis Kelce, and it's Tyreek Hill. And other players are going to come up and have big games. Can Hardman establish himself as a more consistent contributor? If you listen to reports from that, from the people who cover that team, he appears to be on the way to that. I don't know that he's going to be that or ever going to be that. So, likewise, I don't have a ton of faith in Hollywood Brown. I know the Ravens have talked about getting the ball downfield more, focusing on that. They haven't been able to work on it all summer. We missed time with Lamar Jackson with the COVID issue. Brown missed almost the entire month with a hamstring issue. Sammy Watkins is missing time. Rashad Bateman is out through the start of the regular season following groin surgery. So I think all this tells me maybe they're going to have a hard time getting off the ground. Again, neither of those guys inspire me. So if you want to move on from either of them, pick your poison. For me, it'd probably be Hardman, but I wouldn't talk you if you said, "Nah, I want Hardman. I'm getting rid of Brown." I would not talk you out of that.
That sounds great.
I think Emel's in agreement.
Good points. Yeah, I totally agree.
John Wagner wants to know in a half-point PPR, Davis or Harris. So I'm heading in Harris territory. Love all the people named Harris. Can't get enough of them. Damien, look, so we're a little fearful of the Patriots' history of not using running backs in a fantasy-friendly manner, which for the most part they don't. Unless they have one, they do. We can go back to Antoine Smith. We can go back to Corey Dillon. The period with Lawrence Maroney. The period with LeGarrette Blount. When they get a true workhorse, they tend to ride that horse. And it looked to me late last season that they found that guy in Harris. Now, Ramondre Stevenson's looked great in preseason play, mostly against third-teamers, so he probably should look great. But nonetheless, he did. He did what they wanted him to do and was very explosive. So maybe he, does a little bit to cut in. We know James White is going to be there in a receiving role, so expect that. But I think Harris is a pretty solid play. I'm not against Davis. I thought he fared really well. Given the opportunities in Carolina, it was a little uneven. Would have liked, more consistent high-end production. Not a great addition in the receiver, but it's a half-point PPR. So, I'd rank them pretty evenly. So, I wouldn't talk you out either one. The momentum for me is leaning towards Harris now that we have Cam Newton no longer there.
Totally agree, and also, at least at this point, Harris can get him a little bit later. Depending on where you are in the serpentine, you may be able to say, yeah, I can take an extra this or an extra that, or get that tight end in the second or third round, and then maybe take Harris one round later that I would have had to take Davis already. And now I've added to my team. I've got one of the two, and I got something else a little bit better, which may make my team better.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. So there we have it. Rashad Penny is still a free agent. Would you take him as a stash? I talked to somebody about this last night. I'd mentioned speaking to Curtis Crabtree, who covers the team locally for the AP and other outlets, and also for Pro Football Talk. And I think they would love for Penny to be that number 2, right? The guy behind Chris Carson. Alex Collins is making that difficult. He's looked fantastic all summer long. So I mean, I think it's a little bit of a roll of the dice. There comes a time where I kind of just, feel like players have lost their momentum. So whatever the investment the Seahawks have made in him, to me, has dissipated. I know he was a first-round pick, but it's been a few years of getting nothing. At some point, you've got to decide whether, whether you stick with that investment or that sunk cost or let it go. And sometimes you have to let go of it. Maybe the Seahawks are at a point where they're ready to do that. I'm not sure. Penny is coming off, had another cleanup on his knee this offseason. Hasn't done a lot this summer. Last I heard, Pete Carroll talked about him needing to work his way up to even out the strength in his legs, meaning one quad. The repaired knee was a little weaker, and they didn't want him to, be out of balance when he's running. So these things are all concerns. It's been an ongoing concern for me. So I don't know. I don't know that I would take him as a stash. I might look at the whole list and make a different decision. But he is a reasonable stash if he's available on free agent. And you have room on your roster and don't have to release anyone who's going to give you any immediate production.
Sounds good.
All right. So we have Kelsey and Hill in an 8-team league, first 2 choices. I mean, putting your eggs in one basket, right? So I'm sorry, I missed Valerie's question here. No pick number yet, but order: running back, wide receiver, quarterback, etc. None. Have no order. The players that are available should determine your order. Get this question a lot. I don't do it like that. I don't sit there and say I need to come in. I'll have a vague plan. Like, I'd like to come out of the first 3 rounds or first 4 rounds with 2 running backs, a tight end, and a wide receiver. I'd like to. It doesn't always play out that way because the players available determine ultimately what happens. So while I have a vague plan or an idea of what I'd like to come away with, goals, it's just like the Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the nose. When someone gets taken out from under you or whatever, you have to be flexible. And I think, having that rigid plan in mind kind of limits, it also lends to a little bit of can lend to a little bit of panic when you do get sniped, right? When someone's drafted right out from under you and you were dead set on that player at that position, and then you have to go, instead of reaping the value at another position, since you're locked into that one position, you maybe overlook what's available at another spot that might have been a much greater value. So kind of keep it loose and open, Valerie, to the degree possible. Have a plan. Be ready to veer away from the plan.
Well, also, if you don't know, I'm sorry. If you don't know your draft position yet, I mean, anything could change. You got the number 1 pick, you're taking a running back. You got the 10th pick, and Javonte Adams falls to you there. You're probably taking a wide receiver. So you want to have a plan. You want to understand how you want to build your roster, but you got to figure out what your pick number is before you really can start saying, well, you can refine it a little bit. Like Bob says, you got to be ready to move on your plan when things change in the draft and feel good about it. You can take advantage of situations.
Having an emotional investment in the plan is not always helpful. But, I always talk about, when you're playing fantasy, you need to divorce the emotion. So that investment in a plan, it kind of can cloud your perspective as you're trying to go through a draft, and you want to keep a more open mind. So have goals and not a plan, Valerie, is what I would say. And she mentions it's an 8-team. So you have a lot of wiggle room there. So I would keep it free and open. John Wagner, would it make sense to have Kelsey and Hill on an 18 team, first 2 choices? Sure. I mean, putting all your eggs in one basket is, not for me the ideal thing, but when I do, I want it to be a really good basket. And the Chiefs' offense is a really good basket. And those are 2 of the nicest eggs in that basket. So, I'm not totally against it, but just keep in mind when, it's late in the game, and let's say you need points, and the Chiefs' opponent's offense is having a great day, and they're driving the ball down the field, and your team's not on the field. Oh, damn it, what am I going to do? Or let's say it's all of a sudden Byron Pringle week, and the touchdowns go to some outlier player. I mean, it's not the normal, but when it happens, maybe it happens at a bad time. So those are the things you should be thinking about when you're putting all your eggs in that basket. Again, super good basket, not against it. It's just not generally an approach I take. Just more looking to diversify to kind of improve my odds. But again, the Chiefs' offense is a good one to do that. Any differentiation for you there, Emil?
Yeah, that's, I'm still trying to figure out where he's taking Hill, because maybe you could get Javonte Adams, or maybe you could do something and get Ridley a little later, and then you get away from the same team situation. But that may not happen that well, because I don't know if Hill versus Ridley is a little bit far in typical drafts, but maybe you play that out a little bit. And, in an 18 league, you're going to be able to get two good. If you wanted to end up going tight end or receiver, you're still going to have some good. You're still going to be able to get two good running backs to fill a starting lineup. So I wouldn't be afraid of it because of that reason.
Right. So we'll finish up with this one. It's been a nice hour. We appreciate y'all coming. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the content. Be ready to come back all season long. I'll be here every Saturday doing this. We'll talk lineups and injuries and various things, and we'll all have all kinds of stuff up on the site to help you along with that. Once the flash update cranks up, including my Saturday injury overview video, we'll have Casey Joyner's Friday article on covering all the injuries. We'll have early week injury coverage with Joe Kalana. We'll have free agent coverage with Evan Parciano. We'll have DFS coverage with John Laub, Justin Linero, Jamie Calandro. Commissioner coverage with Reginald James. Tons of stuff for you. Everyone should be ready for it. And our weekly rankings, our staff rankings, are adjusted throughout the week to reflect all the latest news and information. So we think you're going to find pretty much everything you need. And My Fantasy GM will help you, especially if you're like me and you manage a ton of teams. It's almost impossible for me. I'm in close to 30 leagues. I need help. That's how I get it. So let me finish up, and again, hit the subscribe button here on this YouTube channel so you get notifications. Hit the notification button. And be ready to watch for more content, including our Sunday morning videos. We have pregame talks and DFS lineups, etc., with members of the staff. So we'll have that. But let me just get this last question. Some players I like a little higher and lower on compared to ADP. I mean, I think we talked about that. Again, if you want to go, Rob, to the website, if you're a subscriber, go look at the free square video, or go to the YouTube channel. The video will be there. Look for the free square players. There's tons of players we like. That I like, above ADP, and I'll just name a few. James Conner is one that's kind of diminished for me because the ADP has risen, but still like him a little bit. Like a lot of times, the cheaper component in any group setting, like let's say the Tampa Bay wide receivers. Like I got nothing against Chris Godwin. I love Mike Evans. He's consistently a 1,000-yard receiver. Antonio Brown in the 8th round looks pretty damn good, though, when you consider the last 5 games. He was the most heavily targeted receiver in that lineup, right? And he had the most yards after the catch of any of those receivers, and comes in this season with a full off season, comes in healthy. Tom Brady hit, in stride. So I look for situations like that. I like Corey Davis a little above where he's going. I like Phillip Lindsay. I mentioned him a little above where he's going. Mostly the guys I like that are going, that I would take, that I like above ADP, I still want to take at ADP, right? I want to get that value because that's one of the things that's appealing about them. So go check out that free square video. And you'll get a little more than that. Some players that I'm dialed back on a little bit. I mean, like I'm not against Saquon Barkley. I just, I want to minimize downside with my first pick or my first couple picks. And so I'm probably making safer plays or other players I can pivot to. And that's the thing, find a range of players, find a tier of players. And if you like someone in that range, right, you say, oh, wow, I really like him, and someone takes him out from under you, then you have another handful of similar players that you like pretty much equally well. Or conversely, if there's someone you just don't feel comfortable with, like in the first 5 picks. I mean, I'm not saying don't draft Alvin Kamara. I'm saying I'm less comfortable with him given the changes to the offense, that a quarterback who targeted him 28% of the passes the last 4 years is no longer there. Is he going to have the same value? Is he going to catch those 80 passes as a season? Well, yes, maybe. Also, there are players at that price that I like just as much, and I feel a little more confident in the role. So those are the kind of shaded decisions I'm making when it comes to ADP. So, I pay attention to it. I like a lot of players more beyond what their price is. And so you should have a list of that ready when you're drafting. A lot of times I'll put these players in my work list, depending on, or my queue, just to have them there because they're off the ADP radar, right? So do that when you're drafting on any of the commissioner sites, and also go watch the Free Square video. I think that'll give you some stuff that you can chew on there, Rob. I appreciate the time, and thanks everybody for coming along. Again, I'll be back next Saturday. We'll be in regular season mode. I'll be answering your lineup questions, or at least discussing them with you. I hate that whole idea that we're answering questions. You guys know as much. I mean, the questions, we can tell by what you're asking that you're informed and on top and interested in your teams. You're competitive. You're looking to win a championship. We know that. So we try to have conversations here with you and share with you ideas and information that we have. I'm not going to tell any one of you what to do. My job is not to be the expert. My job is to make you the expert. So we'll have those conversations here every Saturday throughout the season. You'll hear them also on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, the Football Diehards Show, Monday night, Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. to midnight, or Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. You'll hear us Saturday afternoon, 5 to 7 on the Fantasy Channel, 8 to 11 on the NFL Channel. You'll hear me on Sunday mornings, 11 to 1 on Fantasy Channel with Jeff Manns. And you'll hear me on Fantasy Dirt throughout the weeks, once every other week or so. So plenty of times to hear me. Look at the website. We'll have tons of information up for you, weekly rankings, articles, great advanced analytics from Casey Joyner as well, and some truly high-end DFS content from the likes of John Lobb, Jamie Calandro, Jason Brady, Justin Linero, the whole crew. We'll have you covered. Evan Tarciano as well, chiming in on the free agency. So don't miss out. Appreciate you coming. Watch for us next week. Check your emails for notifications or hit your notification button right here. We'll talk to you next week.